So this evening there's no need for a Dhamma talk request, as this will just be the introduction to the Thanksgiving retreat. So actually we've got quite a few people here in person. Got quite a few people here in person and online, and the number says 92 online. So it's 131 people registered, but for some people being in other parts of the world, and the time is different. And so I'll give just a few introductory words, and then we'll invite Luang to come on. And anybody who's here in person, feel free to then turn around and look at the screen when Luang comes on. We'll be able to watch his Dhamma talk in that way. And just a brief word on the precepts, on determining the precepts for this retreat. And there might be some questions. Sometimes questions about the precepts come up in the Q&A, and I can preempt some of those, like of course, eating at inappropriate times. The Vinaya rule that we have for bhikkhus here in the monastery is between dawn and midday. Midday, according to Vinaya, is counted by the zenith of the sun, but we just arbitrarily say that's noon for this time of year. We say between dawn and noon, and so wherever you are in the world, then that can be the time. There are things allowable in the afternoon, the 5 tonics, if anybody's familiar with the Vinaya, then in the afternoon you can have things like fruit juice, and there are a few allowable things that can be had, honey, sugar. I won't go into that in detail here, but there are some light things that people can have in the afternoon as well when you're determining the 8 precepts. The high and luxurious sleeping place, sometimes people ask about that, so it really depends on what your needs are. In the Vinaya, we're not supposed to sleep on a bed with legs that are higher than 8 finger breadths. That's how measurements were done in the time of the Buddha. That's 8 inches. So 8 finger breadths is 8 inches. The word for inch in Thai is nyu, which means finger. So that's where it's roughly, a finger breadth is roughly an inch. And so, but then whatever your needs are. So for myself, if I sleep on too soft of a surface, if I sleep on too soft of a surface, my back hurts, so I kind of need a harder surface. Some people might have different needs. We're not supposed to use a pillow half the size of our body. Supposed to be smaller than that, a little bit more austere than that. But not, in general, not paying too much attention to our bedding or our sleeping place. The other precepts are more or less self-explanatory, but they may come up later on in the retreat. For Luang in Thailand right now, it's roughly 11:15 a.m., I believe. He's just had his meal, and also he will be joining us for morning puja, which will be evening puja for him. So he'll be joining us for our morning pujas, morning chanting, and that'll be like the end of his day. And then also giving talks at 1 p.m. here, which is going to be quite early for him. It's going to be 4 a.m., so we'll see how that goes for him, and if we need to readjust, we'll take as kind of a theme Ajahn Amaro's phrase, adaptability is the key to happiness. So we'll have to be adaptable and try to feel out what works. And this is a monastic retreat, so that's very much a monastic theme, is not to necessarily go by exactly what your plan is, but to be open and fluid. And it's kind of like on Tudong, if you have a set plan, you're just setting yourself up for disappointment. But if you're open to intuitively moving into whatever situation presents itself, then setting yourself up for very good things. So we won't go on for too long this first evening, but we'll invite Luang to come on and speak to us. I'll be muting myself so that there won't be any feedback. And also, I'm going to be taking this wireless mic and actually setting it in front of the TV with the hopes that it picks up on the YouTube live stream, which I think it will. So please, we'll invite Luang Pasanno to come on.
Greetings, everyone. Lovely to see the Sangha gathering together at Abhayagiri. Great to see all the community plugging in from afar, all the various places that are joining the retreat from. That's quite a gathering, and quite lovely. I mean, here I'm in Thailand. I arrived on Wednesday, and which here it's Saturday already, so I guess 3 days ago. And starting to settle in, and well, we'll see how long it takes. But it's what it is. I'm quite happy to be able to be joining you all, and the opportunity for Thanksgiving retreat is to be where, because of COVID, of course, last year and this year we're doing it completely online, and I don't know, it seems to work. Seems to be fine. And here in Thailand, I think there's about 8 or 10 people who have joined, and it was great to have people here. And I think one of the things in terms of the retreat, just giving oneself the time, the opportunity to step back from our various duties, engagements, responsibilities in the world, with family, and even in the monastery. I mean, because say the retreat is taking place at Abhayagiri, so then it's we're having just stepping back from the various routines and duties, responsibilities, and giving each other the time to retreat, sort of to step back, to pull back a bit, because we tend to be so kind of engaged and not just engaged, usually entangled, and that it makes for a certain agitation in our life, agitation in our hearts. So giving ourselves 10 days to step back and to bring attention to settling the mind, settling the heart. And of course, that's a really nice idea, but it takes more than having an idea or having a thought that I'd like to do that. It takes putting forth the effort. And one of the words that Ajahn Ñāṇiko mentioned in the just before evening puja as a theme is enjoyment. And I think it'd be really useful to pick up that theme of enjoyment, and because sometimes we can say begin a retreat or begin Dhamma practice, and it becomes it's not so enjoyable. We get tense, we get tight, we try to concentrate the mind, we try to force the mind into some sort of meditative state, whatever that is, and it's not very enjoyable. Or even keeping precepts. There's it's like because normally one would be say keep trying to abide by the 5 precepts during a period of retreat. It's ordinary to be, especially if one's at a retreat center or at a monastery, picking up 8 precepts, and we can do all of these things with creating burdens or creating sense of it's almost like oppression, where we're trying so hard to be, say, maybe restrained in our precepts and strict in our practice, that we forget to enjoy ourselves. And I think it's really useful to remind ourselves, and I think every day to bring it to mind. How can I enjoy this retreat? Because it is enjoyable to be peaceful. It is enjoyable to be experience a settled, stable mind, a settled, stable heart. That's really enjoyable. Say, as opposed to kind of agitation, proliferations, and complications that we tend to get caught up in. So enjoyment, and certainly the having precepts just on a regular basis in our life is really enjoyable to have a sense of like blamelessness. One is living in a way that is blameless. So one isn't harming, one isn't hurting, one isn't taking advantage of anyone, and that is it's a wonderful thing and worthy of enjoying. One is especially on retreat. A lot of the sense of the precepts is increasing simplicity. It's like stepping back from, say, a simplicity in eating, just eating in the period between dawn and noon, and then stepping back from various entertainments. Having a simplicity in one's living space. So there's this simplicity that we are setting as a standard for our day-to-day living. And picking that up for these 10 days and paying attention to it and seeing, well, what is the benefit of simplicity? What is the benefit of having that kind of enjoyment of simplicity or a contentment in things that are not complicated? It's a good question for ourselves. Is this something that's useful? Is it beneficial? Do I want to try to keep that in my life more? Because that's also, in terms of a retreat, it isn't just a matter of coming into a retreat situation and then gritting one's teeth and patiently waiting for it to be over so you can get back to your normal life. It's an opportunity to say, what benefit is this life of Dhamma practice? How can I integrate it into my day-to-day life? What kind of things would work? in my day-to-day life. So I think this is I think that's one of the things that is really helpful in terms of I'll say like an online retreat, because people are doing it for the most part, doing it in their homes, and using this, say, retreat time to see, well, how can I integrate more Dhamma practice or aspects of Dhamma practice into my day-to-day life at home and in my various responsibilities or duties that I do have. And so it's an ongoing reflection. Because certainly the way that the Buddha taught is not that there's a huge separation between Dhamma practice and kind of quote unquote real life. In fact, as we practice more, as we bring Dhamma into our day-to-day life, that becomes a much more of a reality that is worth living. And that's certainly my bias and my perspective, but I think it's worth considering and reflecting how to, if it doesn't happen. So that sense of experimenting in this practice and reflecting on how to, not just how to do the methodology of the practice, but how to integrate the practice. And that's something that because sometimes we're good at following instructions, but we're not so good at internalizing it and really making it our own. And that's, for the Dhamma to really come to life, we have to learn how to integrate it with our whole being. And that's actually one of the qualities of the Dhamma when we do the chanting, that open Ñāṇiko, is that it's leading inwards. The nature of the Dhamma is that it's leading inwards. It should be, and we of course we need to facilitate that. How do we draw these teachings? How do we draw this truth into our hearts so that we are able to live it? And that is that's a great kind of opportunity. It's a great experiment. So just taking the time, putting forth the effort to see what works, but then also enjoying it. I think that's one of the things that me to certainly to Ajahn Chah, in that going to pay respects to him, going to live in his monastery. He was somebody who was extremely focused and had an integrity and a commitment to practice and to training. He was very strict, but he was happy. He enjoyed himself immensely in the world, and it was always it was sort of like he had that kind of solidity of being that I think he felt he was quite amused by the world and human beings and that's, and sometimes it was his kind of humor and enjoyment would be. So I remember just like one him kind of his definition of, somebody asked him, well, what is a human being? And Ajahn Chah's, he didn't miss a beat. He said, oh, a human being is a being with issues. we've always got issues. And it's, in Thai, it comes to, กูมีเรื่อง It's somebody with issues. And we have issues that make us happy. We've got issues that make us sad. We've got issues that keep things complicated and agitated. And we have issues that tend to linger in our hearts, and we don't resolve them. So that's part of the purpose or the opportunity for this practice is going to live a human life, without all these entangling issues of the heart. And it's not by just neglecting them or negating them or ignoring them. This is what mindfulness is. Mindfulness is aware of everything. And when you're really mindful, you can't escape the very issues that we have of, our various attachments, our various biases, our various prejudices, the things that we tend to get agitated or upset by, but we have to learn. And that whole purpose of practice is to learn, to study. And it's really embedded in the language of the teachings. Like when they say that when the Buddha talks of the Noble Eightfold Path leading to the cessation of suffering, so that right view, right through the right concentration. It's oftentimes condensed into the three trainings, the Traisikha, training in virtue, the training in meditation, the training in wisdom. And that word sikha, in terms of the, Traisikha, the three trainings, that word sikha, its meaning is not, it's been translated over time as training, but it's in the scriptural language, it's also the same word that you use for education or learning, to study, so that our training or our education, our study is in those aspects of virtue, of meditation, of wisdom, and we train in it, but we have to also educate ourselves. We have to learn, and being willing to learn, taking an interest in learning, and any learning that is, that we begrudge or we're not particularly happy or we're not enjoying, we tend not to learn very well. That was my experience and my story of school, and whether it was elementary school, high school, university, I didn't learn much. So I really didn't enjoy it. When I came across the Dhamma, came across the teachings, and came across the practice, particularly as presented in the Thai forest tradition by Ajahn Chah and other great teachers, that made me really interested, and really, I found it really enjoyable. And I've been a monk now for almost 50 years, and if I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't do it. And that but that's that sense of, the Dhamma being something that is really enjoyable and it doesn't mean it's not difficult, but sometimes even difficulty, because it's a bit of a challenge. So that with something that's a challenge, we can learn from. And there's a really good example of that when Liam was one of the times that Liam was visiting Abhayagiri. We took him over to the city of 10,000 Buddhas to visit, and the abbot of City of 10,000 Buddhas, the founding teacher had several years before that, and the abbot was fairly young, and he was certainly having some difficulties. I could certainly empathize with him for myself, having been put into the position of abbot of Wat Nanachad at a young age, and not voluntarily. And so, in the same way that this monk was chosen by Master Shunhua, and he was quite a bit younger than many of his peers, but he was. Anyway, we went over and we, lovely gathering and meeting, and the abbot asked Luang Liam, what was the most difficult thing that he's had to deal with in his practice? And Luang Liam thought for a minute, and he said, well, probably the most difficult thing was maybe like fear, having to work through various kinds of fear. He said, but, that's really not an appropriate way to look at it. An appropriate way to look at it is to recognize that whatever difficulty we're experiencing, that is our teacher. It's a worthy opponent for us to learn from. And as soon as you change that perspective, and it's sort of like there's something, yes, there is some difficulty that we're experiencing. It might not be very easy, but you recognize it. Oh, this is a word for me to learn from and to understand in order to not be, intimidated by or be oppressed by, and what I can be free from, so that taking our various quote unquote issues and using them to help us understand more clearly how do we be free? How do we be happy? How do we be free from suffering? How do we enjoy just our day-to-day life as a human being? Because this is a very fragile and impermanent situation as a human being. It's fraught with old age, sickness, and death. It's fraught with separation and change, and we can't force it to be otherwise. What we can do is learn from it. We can understand it, and we can be free within that. So that it is taking the time to, this is a period of retreat. We've got 10 days to experiment with what works. You will be hearing various teachings from myself, from Ajahn Ñāṇiko, from Ajahn Kurundammo, perhaps from others, and just taking those teachings and reflecting on them and how to bring them into the heart and learn, to study and educate oneself with those as a basis. But I think, again, just to return to Ajahn Ñāṇiko's kind of word of the day, enjoyment, and let that be the theme of the retreat. So these are a few words for reflection this evening, and I wish you all a beneficial retreat time.